Probe continues its focus on the nation's crime problem. Recently, opposition spokesman on national security, Peter Bunting, gave some very important indicators of where the solutions are most likely to come from in tackling the nation's crime problem. The manner in which he spoke, one is clear. Here's somebody who has had time to think about it, has had the experience dealing with the problem, and is willing to share it in a kind of nationalist spirit. That's how I heard him, certainly. He talked about the geographical distribution of crime, very important issues. He talked about the dangers and weaknesses of hard policing as a single strategy. He talked about the low-hanging fruits, and he talked about how it is that he came to the Unite for Change approach to crime, and used the McIntyre Villa incident that I think was very important. And finally, he talked about not just hard or soft policing, but smart policing. Let's listen to Peter Bunting.
There's a way used internationally to compare homicide rates, murder rates, across different size countries or different size populations. They put it on a per 100,000 basis. And we do that in parishes across Jamaica. And in Manchester, for example, the murders per 100,000 last year was 21 per 100,000. On the lower end of the scale in Jamaica's parishes. In St. James, the murders per 100,000 last year were 145. 145 murders per 100,000. That's 3 times the average for the rest of Jamaica. That's 7 times the average of Manchester. That the World Health Organization uses 10 fatalities per 100,000 to declare an illness an epidemic. So you would have the equivalent of 14 epidemics going. The Professor Herbert Gill speaks of 30 murders per 100,000 as being a civil war. So you have about 5 civil wars going in St. James. But when you looked at the relative budgets of the ministry, 95% was spent on crime control, on the policing, and less than 5% was spent on the social intervention side. But it's around that time that I started getting exposed to what is really the public health approach to combating violence, treating violence as an epidemic, just like an epidemic of flu or of cholera or any contagious disease. The greatest predictor of a case of violence is a previous case of violence. And so it became clear to us that if you use this public health approach, then you need to start changing some of the approaches or complementing the approach of just more and stronger policing. And that's when we designed and launched the initiative called Unite for Change. But I remember over a 2 or 3 year period between about 2012 and 2014, murders fell in that police area, the Granville police station area, from something like 48 to about 8 over a couple of years, over a very relatively short period of time. And that had a lot to do with the mobilization of the community, forming a partnership with the police sub-officer in charge of the Granville police station. I remember, we're told once a month they would have a social function where everybody, they would string up a set and people would come in from the community and play dominoes, etc. We had a whole series of peace marches and rallies and we partnered with parenting organizations, etc. And so it wasn't by accident that we saw those very positive results, Mr. Nesbitt, in Granville. We had a similar positive experience in a community in East Kingston called McIntyre Villa. It was really, the community had hit rock bottom, because after the infant was killed, an attempt was made to find another infant to kill in reprisal. So it wasn't just life for life in reprisal, it was infant life for infant life. And I think it really shook up everybody, and a whole, pastors came in, ACP Coelho played a key role in it from the police side, and they started a whole movement within the community. And again, similar to Granville, we're a community that had murders every month. Went for a year with, I think, a single murder, and it was a domestic sort of situation. We ended up having, a mass wedding there. Suddenly, the police started to find assault rifles under a barrel in a chicken coop. Just amazingly, things started popping up, weapons started being found by the police. Of course, it wasn't just luck on the part of the police. It was the fact that the relationship of trust had been built between the police and the citizenry. It wasn't by accident that 2014 was the lowest, had the lowest level of murders, 1,005 for about in the last 15 or so years, because we put a lot of work into building those relationships of trust. We did a lot of other things in terms of the style of policing. We civilianized the dress and appearance. We held officers and their men stringently accountable for the use of force. We promoted proximity policing, where police personnel wouldn't just come into a community in blue denim and body armor and assault rifles, jump out, scrape up a whole heap of people and carry them to the station for processing. But instead, we tried to put police posts in some of the toughest communities, where the policemen were there every day and got to know who was who, and therefore you could do the proverbial spear fishing rather than net fishing. We started then with the assistance of the United States. We got 7,000 less lethal kits to issue to frontline police officers, so their gun wasn't always the first option. We started the initiative for the body-worn cameras. It took a long time, but finally they're now deployed in 4 different police divisions. And we saw, even while crime was going down, police fatal shootings dropped to the lowest levels between 2014 and 2015, the lowest levels in decades. So, this idea that it's only hard policing or soft policing, it's really smart policing that you need to deploy.
I've paid attention to Jamaica's crime problem for a long time, perhaps over 3 decades. But the statistic from Peter Bunting's speech that stood out to me is the comparison between Manchester and St. James. That tells a story, and I believe we have to explore it further, and I would like to come back to it in future discussions, perhaps with a sociologist or so on. But I want to thank Peter Bunting for putting the issue succinctly and making it clear where we must look if we're going to find solutions to our crime problem.